Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 138 of Kouryer Podcast. Our today's guest is Mr. Michael Shinde. He's a senior environment concept artist working at Riot Games, working on VALORANT from our city, United States. And with that quick introduction out of the way, by the way, the caption I wrote, I didn't add this Instagram caption on the introduction, as you can see, because he's on Twitter. But I also linked his Twitter ID in the captions as well, so you can follow him there, his art station and his website. Just want to quickly mention that before we start. Now that I mentioned that, we can jump into the first question. Give us a little introduction on how you got into the worlds of visual arts and design and everything. Basically, the beginning spark. What was it?
Oh, that's a tricky one. I think I didn't have a traditional, background that you might hear a lot of people say, where they were always interested in art as a kid, or they were drawing and whatnot. I do have memories of drawing when I was little, but definitely not a ton. I think it mainly my journey into concept art started in high school. I took I took a basic art class and then an advanced art class. And in the advanced one, I had Academy of Art come by during one of our classes, which is a college university. And they did a presentation on why you should come to our school and whatnot. And I think from that point, I was hooked. I was like, okay, I didn't have anything else that I wanted to do with my life at that point. I was kind of I don't know, just wandering, I guess. So I kind of hooked onto that thing, and yeah, I ended up going to the academy. And from there, I did the whole freaking, what was it, 5 years in San Francisco at that school. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of the basic, I guess, that little outline of how I got in. I think from there it kind of just goes into my career. But there's really nothing special about my intro into the world of illustration, concept art, and stuff.
All right, and well, about that, I actually want to ask you something else. When you were 17, 18, those are some critical times of anyone's life, phases of anyone's life. They're thinking about future, what they want to do. And at that time, were you sure you wanted to become an artist at that time, or you were pursuing another more stable route so you can later get into art? How was it for you?
No, I was I wanted to go to that school because I knew that it was something, right? It was a direction, but I wasn't sure exactly what the direction was. I did apply to traditional colleges because my parents wanted me to, and they rightly so were a little worried that I was going to go down the art path. And that was probably because my art was very bad. I think if I was my parent at that time and I saw my art and then my kids said, I want to go to art school, this is my art, I would have been like, you're crazy, you're not going to make it. It's so bad. But I mean, even when I went to academy, I changed my degree in my 3 times. I started as a game design major and then illustration, and then they opened up a viz dev major later on, which I then switched to. So I switched multiple times. And actually, when I first went in, I went in wanting to be a rigger, which is, for those that don't know what rigging is, it's basically they put bones inside of character models and make them move and animate, right? And after a semester of that, I decided that I did not want to do that at all, and I switched over to illustration shortly after.
All right, that's kind of interesting. And well, I mean, you kind of mentioned how the situation was, when you were at those ages, but if you could, get back in time and say something to your 18-year-old self that you think would drastically change the course of the actions you took for the better, of course, what would you say?
Oh my gosh. that's the most difficult question you could ask me. I don't know. Draw more. I don't know. There's so many other things. There's so many things that just relate to, I guess, not art too. But I guess if I had to pick something art related, I just keep drawing. I think I think throughout my schooling years, I ended up focusing on painting a lot, and I think that rather than drawing, I think in general, the more that you draw, the better off you'll be, rather than focusing on painting. But that's just my opinion, at least for concept art, and that goes into a whole topic of, you know, what you need to be working like in the industry and stuff effectively. But yeah, I think just draw more, and draw in pen too. I guess
Yeah,
not super deep advice, but is something, I guess.
yeah. Actually, like I know, like everyone is hyped, like me included, to get into digital art, learn 3D, like all this cool, fun stuff you can do, but it's not really like constructive to set aside traditional mediums just to focus on those. I mean, yeah, of course there's like brushes for literally every medium on Photoshop and other tools, but
Yeah.
getting that hand-eye coordination with the traditional is much more foundational, I think, in my personal opinion. Like, I'm not a pro artist, by the way, I'm just some noob who just started, but this is just what I feel. Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's accurate, right? Like you said, you're still new to this, but it's still, I think that's spot on. People can get like very caught up in the different programs that are out there, right? Like if you were to name a few, like 3D Co and Blender and Marvelous Designer and all these other things that might help your workflow like be faster and look better in the end. But I think more often than not, what I see like students fall trap to is getting caught up in those programs rather than just learning how to design with pencil or pen or whatever. Because at the end of the day, right, like if you can communicate your idea in pencil effectively or whatever, like traditional mediums or even digitally with like just drawing, you'll be better off because programs change constantly, and that's like a thing that you're going to constantly be trying to be keeping up with, rather than just learning the foundations.
Yeah, definitely. And all right, like in the introduction, I kind of mentioned that, I mean, of course, you're a senior environment concept artist, but like we already know that. But here's the thing, I want to get a little bit more in depth, all right? So what is your main branch of design right now you're working on, like that you're focusing on, and tell us about your experience from the beginning of it that you started until now. Like, how was the journey?
Okay, so to reiterate, you said like what I'm doing now, and then like the journey to how I got here. Okay, so yeah, I work on VALORANT, which is like a first-person tactical shooter, and I only do environments on that game, thankfully, because I think if I had to do characters or anything like that, I can do characters, but I definitely prefer to just sit down and do environments all day. And on that job, it's mainly like technical drawing, and you do some paintings like every now and then, but it's not heavily focused on that. We're mainly just doing like quick sketching. You can do a concept like basically, half a day or whatever and be done with it. So it's not like a ton of pretty work, but it's a lot of this, typical production design work, which I find, one, it's helpful, but it's also like, it's a challenge and it keeps me on my toes and it's like exciting to do, rather than like spending like 5 days on a freaking painting that may or may not be useful to a 3D artist, by the time you're done with it. And prior to working on VALORANT, I worked at Turtle Rock Studios, which I was working on Back 4 Blood at the time. And well, actually, so I was there for 4 years at Turtle Rock. And during my time there, I worked on 2 canceled games and then Back 4 Blood for the remainder of that time. And for Back 4 Blood, again, I've always been focused on environments. I've never been like a character concept artist or anything like that. But at Turtle Rock, what I did was slightly different because it was more like photo bashing, photo-based workflows, which is again, like completely different from what I'm doing now. And I think it's in a good way, because it's like, if I look at my journey, it's been progressively getting more and more back to just like design roots, which is like, for me, is fantastic, because I love challenging myself in that way. I think photo based work has its own set of challenges, but it became very monotonous at times, right? Like, at the end of the day, when you're working with photos, you bring in your photo and like you do a curves layer, color balance, all these other things that are kind of automated into your mind on like how you do it, right? And it doesn't become, for me at least, it didn't become very exciting after a while. But that's what I was doing at Turtle Rock. The project itself was fun. Back for Blood. Again, it was like a zombie shooter game that's kind of inspired by Left 4 Dead, if you guys are familiar with that. And I think during my time there, it was a great learning process, because I got to do a bunch of different stuff as well that I may not have been able to do at like Riot, for example. Since it was a smaller team, a smaller company, like, you got to touch other areas of production, like getting to work inside the engine a bit more and set dressing in game, right? Something that at Riot, definitely not doing, thankfully, and for the better, because it's like a whole different beast. But I did get to do a bit of that like at Turtle Rock, which is cool. And then, so prior to Turtle Rock, my first job was for One Pixel Brush, which is an outsourcing studio. And there it was similar to Turtle Rock, but it was, since it's an outsourcing studio, right? Like, it's even less so. You're not focusing on game design at all, and you're basically just, my sole focus was just to create a pretty image to deliver to the client, whoever that was, right? Like, whatever game studio that was. And I found that was cool, but had like the same issues as Turtle Rock, where it's like, I don't know. I wanted more out of that. I wanted more out of the job, right? Like, I wanted to be more involved in game dev, which is why I left there. Because at the end of the day, right, like, you're involved in game design, like at an outsourcing studio, or game dev, I guess, but you're kind of like on the outskirts of it. You're not actually in the pit with the dev team. You're kind of just like floating around out there, if that makes sense. So that's kind of like my history so far. So, like, outsourced studio or photo-based stuff, marketing work, and then again, kind of the similar thing, but actually in studio, and now moving away completely from photo-based stuff into like more design-heavy work at Riot.
There's some really critical points I kind of notice in your answers. First of all, is the thing you said about photo-based stuff. I mean, I'm kind of, like, it's weird to say, because I haven't, like, I don't have that kind of experience like you, like in industry and all that, but I kind of feel that in my gut as well. I enjoy environmental art. Personally, that's an issue I want to, go into, like, to become a pro at. Like, that's the goal. But I really don't like, like, I understand, like, I mean, using 3D assets, using photo bashing and all that stuff. Like, I mean, it's essential, for us, a lot of like movie industries, game industries, to just get the job done and, click with the team, and just move the project forward. But personally, as an artist, that, it's like a carpenter that makes like MDF cabinets, but it's not a carpenter that makes the statues. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of like, and I'm like one of my main goals in the like back burner is to actually get good at illustration, so I can actually use illustration skills rather than photo bashing and just other stuff. I mean, they're great. I mean, use it. I mean, actually, I even think if people who want to quickly just get a job or get into industry, they should be super fluent at all those tools. I mean, they're essential, of course, but at the same time, try to keep that in mind to also improve your of course, illustration skills.
Yeah. I think that's totally right. Your point about like getting the job, if you want to get a job quickly, right, be good at like all those skills. I think if you want to get a job quickly, I hate to say it, but I think if you want to get a job quickly, be good at photo bashing because more than likely you'll find something easier that way. And it sounds terrible to say it, but that was at least my experience. And also too with the photo bashing thing, like I relied heavily on photo bashing to hide my lack of skills in certain areas when I was first starting out, which is why like I really enjoy what I do now, because it constantly pushes me to improve in those areas that I lacked before. And it took a little bit of realization and confrontation on myself to know that I was forcing myself into the style of photo bash work, right? Like if you look at my portfolio, it's mainly photo based work, and it's not, maybe that's not necessarily a representation of the type of art that I like, but it's the type of art that I was doing because I lacked skills in certain areas. If that makes sense.
Yeah, even actually, I looked at your website. Like, I mean, there's one. Of course, it's illustration. It's not photo based. I think that those kind of like a red kind of white striped city on the hills on mountain cliffside. You know what I mean? The one.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that is illustration, but like I mean, on your session, yeah, there's a lot of photo heavy stuff, but it's still, like, I mean, although it's heavy, like photo heavy stuff, but it's actually used properly. Like, it's not. It doesn't look like, you know what I mean, what I'm trying to say. You actually have to have the knowledge to make good art, even though you want to use, photo bashing or something. If you don't know how to use them, it's not going to look so good. So in the end, you kind of always have to start from the fundamentals and move back to that. And while we're on the topic, I actually want to ask you something. In the beginning, in the first 100 episodes of the podcast, I had a certain format of the questions and just graphics and everything. But every 100 episode, this is my kind of thing. I changed it up, everything. And the thing I used to ask a lot back then, and I think it's appropriate to ask you now, is it's about portfolios and resumes. Basically, the two main things I learned from those. And for anyone also who's listening, you might want to take notes on this. First is to always detail your works around, and the niche of your works around the studio you want to work for. I mean, that's a no-brainer. But the second really handy one was, first, make it a sandwich portfolio. What it means is put your best work at the top, second best at the bottom, third best at the second, and the worst usually is in the middle area. So when they, for example, check your portfolio and they say, oh, it's all good at top and there's just crap at the bottom, they're not going to like it. But if you kind of mix it up, it's kind of like a psychological tip. They're going to, oh, this guy's overall good. Now, aside from these two, do you have any particular tips and advices for, getting a good portfolio and or like resume, since you're even working at Riot, that it's kind of funny how tables turn. Like, the past couple of years, everyone was dreaming to work at Blizzard, but like in the past 10 years, now we know why, but it's kind of changed now for some reasons. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Like advice for portfolios. I think the two that you gave are pretty good. I would say you could probably go a bit further with the way that you stack your images. I would say just less is more, right? That's a pretty basic one, but if there's something that you're not sure about, just get rid of it. I look at portfolios at work right now, because I help out with that stuff, and we're not going to look very long because there are like a lot of people, but we do. If there's something that catches our eye, we're going to take a second, but it doesn't, you don't have to have like a ton of work for us to be impressed. Like if there's 2 or 3 good pieces on your portfolio, like let's say there's 2 or 3 pieces just at all, but they're like bangers, right? Then that's saying something, rather than somebody who's got like 15 and they're all like, you got maybe 6 that are all right, but then you got, the rest of them that are good. I would much rather I would rather know that know what's good and you've edited it out, right? And if I want more, I'll ask. I'll definitely ask. And I think that's a good thing too, because if you're only showing like a couple of, if you're showing like a limited amount and somebody's reaching out to you they want to know more, that's obviously a good thing for you. And then I also have like an example for that too, right? With when I got hired at One Pixel Brush, one of the guys that worked there at the time, he was kind enough to look at my portfolio before showing it to the art director, or before it got to the art director. And he said, take everything else out except these two pieces, just those two. Okay. And I did exactly that. And it's kind of like a long story, but I'll shorten it for the sake of, the podcast. Basically what happened was he told me to edit out. And then the art director, he was doing a demo at GDC where he was kind of going over like just information about how the studio works and stuff like that. And then at the end of that, he was going to do a critique of one person in the audience, their portfolio. And it just so happened to be my portfolio because the guy, like I said, the guy that worked there, he looked at my stuff beforehand. So he said, hey, you should look at this dude's stuff. And anyways, he was looking at my stuff, critiquing it. And again, there was only two pieces, but it was enough to impress him. And he later that night, like he gave me his card, and later that night he called and offered me the job. But it was based only on two pieces, right? Versus like some other people that I saw getting critiques like after the demo and stuff, they had like much larger portfolios. But again, like it just came down to two pieces. And even for Riot, again, if you look at my entire portfolio, like none of it fits like the style of what I do on Valorant. Like it's actually the exact opposite. There's only one, maybe two pieces that I had at my portfolio at the time that are actually suited for that. But I made sure that I was tailoring it for that job. So again, like quality over quantity, I guess would be my best advice.
And actually, I think the one you're talking about, I can guess what this one is, the Dust 2 reskin, right?
Yep.
Dude, I was going to say, like, that's actually one of my favorite pieces of you. I really love it, honestly. Like, I love the style and just...
Thanks, man.
Yeah, like, I really dig it, honestly. Like, it's really cool. I'll put it in, like, for anyone who's watching the podcast on the YouTube version, like, here you should see, like, the reel of, the guests' work. So I'm going to put those in there as well. For the dear audio listeners, like, I'm sorry, I can't describe. Like, the way I can describe is just, it looks amazing. Just go check it out, all right? On Instagram or YouTube or whatever, right? Now, actually, fun fact before I move on to the next question, I think, one of your colleagues on the podcast recently. Do you know that?
Yeah, you had Adrian, right? Yeah. Yeah, he's a cool guy.
Yeah, and his main was Cypher. What is your main?
Sova, man. Sova all day.
Nice.
Yeah, if you look at my my match history, dude, it's just like Sova all the way down. I have to force myself to switch it up, but I don't think there's another agent that I enjoy quite as much as Sova. It's just so satisfying to use.
Oh yeah, the shots definitely. Well, it takes a lot of skills, those lineups, and just it's kind of turning into like chess. Like in chess, you need to memorize openings and everything. In Valorant, you need to memorize like the openings and the clear outs and the wiper with just everything. Like it's kind of awesome how it turned into this mathematical game, and it absolutely like baffles me. Like seriously, how Riot is crushing it when it comes to like game design and industry. They're literally taking apart every genre and making the best out of it. Kind of like the most fun.
Yeah.
Like they took auto chess, I mean I can say Dota because some of the main developers of Dota worked on League as well, so I can say that. But they basically like here's the thing. Even as a fan, like I played Dota first, then I changed to League of Legends. But I mean, I kind of deleted them both because they were wasting my time.
Yeah, smart.
And my sanity. And but the thing is that Dota was more mechanical and like in terms of methodical, like it was way harder mechanically. But as a game itself, League was way more fun. You had way more fun in League. It kind of balanced out some stuff that Dota wasn't unable to, in my personal opinion. I mean, a lot of people obviously can disagree. The tribalism in these areas are so intense. I don't know why, but that's the case. Yeah. Even with, like, for example, Valorant. Like, the main counterpart to Valorant is Counter-Strike, of course. And it's, again, like Dota. It's way more methodical. It's way more mechanical. It's way more different. It's a different world. But Valorant is a way more fun version of it. Like, I don't know how to explain it. And like it has character, it has soul.
Yeah, I agree. I think one thing that Riot does really well with their games is supporting them and the production behind them, which makes a big difference, right? Like when players know that you care about the game that they like, right? Like the company isn't putting it out and then like just leaving it there to rot, you know? Like Riot really wants to make sure that the games are progressing forward, which makes a huge difference. And you can tell, right? I think in the products themselves.
Yeah, I mean, even like there's so many good things Riot is doing. Like for example, being always engaged with the community itself. Like, you know, that is like an essential, I think, key to, you know, keeping the community alive. But like Valve doesn't do that much. And another thing I wanted to say about, you know, Riot, they're also, I'm super excited for the MMORPG they're developing. Like that is about to set in the world of Runeterra, and they're also working on a fighting game that the beta looked amazing. Like I can't wait to play those, honestly. And I'm sure the brains they have behind those games are going to crush it. I'm sure. Like it's like we're going to have the next Mortal Kombat or Taken or whatever, and dude, it's going to be played in Evo leagues. Like, you know, those leagues for fighting is like I can't wait for the future of, like, you know, the games that Riot's going to make. And
I mean, look at the esports production for League and Valorant, right? So just imagine the production behind a fighting game like that. It's going to be nuts.
Oh yeah, definitely. And but I think, like, I know it's kind of unrelated, but I think the only main critique I would have, like, you know, for that Riot is kind of lacking, and I'm sure it's not an easy job to do, like, I'm sure, but the balancing is like trying to get rid of toxic players. I know it doesn't sound easy. There's so many, like, you know, factors involved. Like I think in the patch they try to implement, like, if, like, in the algorithms they try to put something that if someone's KDA, like, you know, seems really, like, you know, wrong, like they had so many deaths, their feeders, they're gonna get banned. But the problem is, like, I don't know if you played League or not, but personally, but there's a champion called Sion, and one of the main strats for that is to keep killing yourself so your zombie can kill others. So
No,
it's gonna be a bit tricky.
Yeah.
You know, I'm saying it's not easy to balance this stuff out.
Yeah.
And
it's like it's a problem in you know, in Valorant as well, and obviously with League, but like it's such a hard problem to tackle, man. It's because you're dealing with human behavior in multiple different ways, right? Whether it be text or voice, and how to police that and police it, you know, to different degrees, right? That's a difficult one. But I agree. It's like it's one thing that can be improved. I think not just at Riot, but like just in gaming in general, right? It's just a problem pretty much across the industry.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, in every game, like, it doesn't matter. Like, even in chess.com, if you play chess, there's some people toxic. Like, it's weird. People online are toxic. Just, it's weird.
Yeah, it's funny, man. Like, with chess.com toxicity too is so interesting, man. Like, if you're like, if somebody's winning and they think that you should just resign, like they'll like hit you up in the text chat and be like, "What are you doing? Why resign? Wait, come on. Why was taking you so long?" It's like, "Okay, come on, dude, chill."
Yeah, I mean, it's and like, even like just one instance that sometimes, like, it happened twice for me. I think it probably was the same person with different accounts. Like, someone would install like Phoenix and just grief the game, the whole game, and it was a ranked game. And here's the thing: if I just leave the game, Riot would punish me. Because why did you abandon the game? Like, dude, I'm stuck with this guy for the next 20 minutes griefing. Like, what? But yeah, I mean, like, it doesn't happen too much, but when it happens, it's kind of like, like, I don't want to. The problem is the main problem is solo queue, not necessarily the game itself. Because if you have friends, like, I mean, it's fine, you know. It's mostly the solo queue problem. All right. Now, enough.
Yeah, solo queue is a hellhole. But anyways.
All right. So the next question I want to ask is about, like, your process of designing environments, and in that regards, I want to ask, how does your design process usually go anytime you want to start working on a project? Like, basically, what does the structure of your pipeline of work looks like?
Okay. So I think with, I guess with personal work, maybe the best example would be that Dust 2, like, or at least the easiest example to point to, right, would be the Dust 2 reskin. But I don't know. Like, I don't think there's like anything special about it. You know, one thing I think is a common thing is just the reference gathering, and just trying to find something, like, not only cool in the real world, but also something that's cool that I get excited about. Because there's tons of things that are like obviously really cool, but then it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm interested in doing it. So, something that kind of that toes both those lines. I don't know if that really makes sense, but hopefully it does, because I have very like particular tastes for things that are going to make me want to do something outside of work, because when it comes to doing art now, especially since I'm doing it for 8 hours a day, if I'm going to do it on my own time, like after work, I have to make sure that I really, really want to do it. And the amount of things that I would really want to do kind of start to narrow down, quite a bit. So reference gathering, and then I'm really trying to push myself to do like more quick sketches, because one thing that students should not do, that I fall victim to, is just like going with an idea too early. So trying to like, I'm really trying to practice exhausting out my thought process before like moving forward. And I think in the past, some of my design process would be to like go in with maybe a half idea or a general like direction, as like for a comp like a composition or value structure or whatever like that, and then figuring it out on the way, at least for personal work. So again, I'm trying to break that habit, because while I think it can produce some creative results, as like finding it on the way through, I think there is like a value in trying to figure it out in the beginning stages, right? It goes back to the reason why like old masters are so good, and why their work stands the test of time, is because they did things in order. They did like a drawing, and then they did another drawing to make sure that drawing was actually really good, and then they did a value study, and then they did color study, and then they did the final, right? But again, what I used to do would be like kind of just figure everything out, or like maybe do like a quick rough comp and then kind of figure everything out. So I'm trying to push away from that. But then for professional work, it's a lot more structured, I guess. I guess the only constant in there would be like the reference gathering. That's like the super important part, because at the end of the day, you're only as good as your reference. So yeah, hopefully that's like helpful, but it's a little bit of a mess.
All right, and that's kind of interesting. And actually, I want to mention something. I just remembered about the artwork. You kind of did a retake on Dust too.
Yeah.
Here's the thing that kind of like it's like I remember something. How do you think in terms of like game design, like in like the game like TF2, like because the art style kind of remind me of TF2 as well. Mm-hmm. Like the game is fun, of course. I mean, it's still fun, but the weird thing for me is the anomaly is the community is surprisingly wholesome and just goofy memers, like mostly on TF2 side. On Riot, it's half and half. Like you get a lot of toxic weirds, but you kind of get some goofy, like fun people as well. Yeah, Dota, and there's not so much goofiness in Dota or CS:GO. They're just like angry balconies Russian people mostly. Actually, from my side, I don't know. Yeah. And but why do you think is that? Like, do you think it's the characters, like the game, the nature of the game itself, causes the community to react that way, or?
That's a good question. I think. Well, okay. So if we like take the spectrum, right, where it's like TF2 is here, and then like Valorant, and then CS:GO. I think that's like a proper way to put it, where like goofy, and then you get like crazy serious kids that like are, at times can be toxic and try hard. And then in the middle, you have like Valorant, where it's like a combination of those two things, and because you also have the transplants from CS:GO, the people that came over from that game, which influences the way that the community is there. So that's probably a bit of why it's that way, if I had to guess.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the case actually. I think in some senses, Yeah, it's a weird topic. I'm just gonna move from that. Yeah, I just want to say something,
No
but I
worries.
forgot. Yeah. All right. The next question is kind of a fun one because I always get like really interesting answers. What was the first art job paycheck you ever got? What was it for, and how did you feel at the time? Basically, the first money you made out of art.
Oh God. Uh, oh, okay. Yeah, it was nothing concept art related. It was I think I was maybe like a freshman in college, which means that at the time I was terrible at art. I was I was barely figuring out how to draw faces and stuff. And this family friend of my dad's, he's like an older dude. He was probably in his 80s. Uh, him and his wife, I don't remember exactly how it happened, but they wanted me to draw like a bunch of faces in watercolor on a canvas that they were going to hang somewhere. I think they said they were going to put it in their room. And thinking back on it now, I'm like, you guys were crazy. If that's, I don't know. That's just bad art. That's bad taste, and they wanted me to do it. This like freshman in freaking college that barely knew anything about art. And I remember I did this. I did it for them. I remember at the time even thinking that it looked bad, and they paid me $300 for it. And I think the husband, he didn't say anything bad about it, but I think I could tell in his face that he definitely was just like, okay, this is definitely going to go in a corner or something, or in the garage. And I remember hearing from something about his wife was like, what the hell is that, or something. I don't know. But that was my first paycheck, was $300 for this really terrible watercolor painting that I did. That haunts me to this day. I actually wish that I could get it back as a reminder, or as some sort of crazy reminder to myself. But yeah, I remember it was just god awful.
Didn't you have a picture of it or something? Didn't you take a photo of it or nothing?
Oh, I might have, but I would have to dig it up. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, that might be a good content, for a post or something, if you want. Like that's actually a
Yeah.
good idea.
I'm pretty sure there's already a bunch of like really terrible art that I did as a freshman on my Facebook that I just didn't hide. And I'm actually I don't hide it on purpose because I want people to know, if they're willing to dig back that far, like how bad I was at the time. Because I've had people say that it's crazy. And when I say crazy, they actually mean crazy. Where I was when I first came into where I was at by the time I got my first job. And I started working at One Pixel Brush when I was a junior in college. So in that, I think it was like 3 years, I went from there to able to be hired. So, it's like I keep it up for a little bit of a reminder, but also like to make fun of myself because it is some of the worst stuff you'll probably ever see.
Yeah, I think for One Pixel Brush is the founder is Shadi Safadi, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really always wanted to talk with him because I think he's Iranian as well. Yeah, I mean his name screams it. And actually, one of my friends also who was on a guest of the podcast as well. He's also working there, and I was wondering they're really like photo heavy, as you said, kind of like in terms of concept art. But I mean, it's actually like really intense kind of like that level of photo based. Not because earlier in the podcast we talked about some aspects of this, but just want to clearly point that out as well. And how did you the story of got into that studio at first?
So I was in school at the time, so I was still doing classes and stuff, and I was doing personal work, and I was trying to direct my personal work at the time to work at One Pixel Brush, because the goal was, like every kid that's in school, was to work at Naughty Dog or One Pixel Brush or one of these big studios, right? But for me at the time, it was Naughty Dog and One Pixel Brush. But what the benefit to One Pixel was that at that time they had a part on their webpage or on their website that said exactly how to get a job at 1Pixel, and it was images on the left that said don't, and then on the right it said do, and it was just image examples of like don't do this, do this, and I'm serious, like I actually like saved that image out and kept it off to the side every time I would work on something. So that's kind of how I directed myself to kind of get that style of work. And I guess like, yeah, I don't know. Again, I went over the story of like how I got that job, but, I'm sorry, like what was it? What I'm like lost track. Like, what was the question again? You said like
the story of how we got into 1Pixel Brush.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I went over that part, like getting that job, but, the working style and stuff, like, it was just following the website really and like following like some of the artists that already were there, or like adjacent to 1Pixel, right? So like Eitan Zana, Mache Kusiata, John Sweeney, and Nick Gingero, like those guys that at the time were working at Naughty Dog and were famous for the Last of Us and Uncharted and stuff. Those guys were the ones that I was really looking at to try and compare my work to. So I guess having a goal, I guess, would be the best thing to do. You know, having like an artistic goal and a direction.
All right. And what are you working on right now that you can tell us about? I mean, of course, if there's not NDAs involved.
Not much. Like I don't know. I try to like limit the amount of stuff I'm doing outside of work. And I know like some other artists, they have like a ton of other things going on outside of their studio job, which is actually good. I just kind of like to play games on my free time because, you know, with like I have a job and I got 2 kids and a wife, and that's plenty of time, you know, outside of art to like have to you know, go and spend time with them and stuff. So that takes up a lot of my time. So I'll just like late at night, usually around this time, I'm just either playing Valorant or I also teach on the side. So grading student work. And then other than that, at that same school, I'm designing a course for them. So that's also taking up the rest of my time.
All right, now about teaching, I actually wanted to let's get a little deeper into that. Like, you know, when did you start teaching, and like, you know, the whole thing? What are you teaching now, and is it on like a mentorship, or is it like, you know, a normal, you know, just classes? Like, how's it?
Yeah. So let's see. I started teaching in 2019. I think maybe it was 2018. So not very long, but I started teaching first at Brainstorm, which is a school at the time was based in Burbank, California. It's run by John Park and James Pake. And I taught a keyframe illustration class there, which was pretty cool, but also very stressful because there's like so much that goes into keyframe illustration. So to critiquing that work can be a bit overwhelming because depending on the level of the student, like there's so many different things to focus on, right? It's like, is it the perspective? Is it the color, the figures, anatomy, right? Like the environment itself, right? Like there's so many different things to critique in a keyframe illustration, depending on what the work is, obviously. But I don't teach that anymore, or at least for right now. I may consider doing it again if they were to reach out. And then I started teaching at Academy of Art University, the school that I graduated from. And I teach a intro to environment design class there for the visual development program. And that's pretty cool. I think it's like, again, it's like an intro class. So it's, you get like a wide range of students coming in, right? Everybody is a little bit different, which I find is a good challenge because, again, it's like challenging my ability to critique work, right, at multiple different levels. So we're actually about to start that semester up on Monday, which will be a 15-week class. And then on the side, or at the same time as I'm teaching that class, I'll be designing another course for the academy. So I'll be doing video recordings and stuff for that.
All right. Sounds good. So this next Monday, right?
Yeah, man. On the 7th, is it? Yeah, the 7th.
No, it's tomorrow. Oh, I thought it was next week. Oh,
yeah. You're like a day ahead of me.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you're the 6th, right? So yeah, it's a little different for you.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. All right. Yeah, but don't worry, I will edit this podcast out, in the next 5-6 hours after the recording. I'll send you the links to Spotify and YouTube so you can, post it if you want it,
Cool.
All right. So the next thing is, who are your favorite artists and designers that have inspired you the most?
Okay. I think I would divide it by like medium, because I think to say like one person is my favorite artist overall is a little unfair to some of the other mediums that I enjoy, right? Like if I'm talking pen and ink, like James Montgomery Flagg is definitely my favorite for the way that he works with line. It's just like beautiful work, right? It's almost painterly the way that he draws. And then if I'm looking at like oil painters, Richard Schmid, Mark Bojkis, Henry Yan, Zhao Ming Wu, like there's like a ton of different oil painters. And then for digital, I think Jamie Jones and maybe John Park. They're kind of like similar in terms of their aesthetic actually, but I like them for different reasons. And then what else we got? Yeah, I'll just stick with that. I think that's okay. I think that's enough. Like traditional drawing, oil painters, and then digital. Yeah.
All right. And well, I want to ask you about something that I recently started asking people on the podcast. I added to the format. Is there possibly a sketchbook nearby you we can see some of your sketches? I mean, if you want to.
Oh God, I don't think I have a sketchbook nearby. No, I don't think I do. I'm sorry, man.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah,
but
don't worry. My traditional sketching is nothing to write home about, anyways.
No, but still, I mean, in the sketches you see a lot of like the thought process of the artist itself, and I was like, how can I make it a bit different, the whole format of the podcast, so I have things that are specific for that video. Like it's kind of a reward for watching the podcast in the video format.
Yeah.
And you normally listen it on Spotify and other places, but mostly it's listen audio, like in terms of audio, but I want to, kind of give an incentive to people to start watching it on YouTube more. I mean, of course, a lot of my audience is Iranian like me, and in Iran, YouTube is a lot of websites are filtered. And so it's a little bit hard to access it. Like we need to use VPNs and all those anti-filter softwares and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But still, for my non-Iranian audience, they can easily, access YouTube. No big.
Yeah, I think that's great that you're thinking of that. Yeah, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, I didn't.
No worries.
I'm prepared.
It's fine. And the next thing I want to actually ask you is your whole experience at working on Riot. I mean, like anything you think might be interesting for people to hear.
Okay. I think that in general, working at Riot is like Riot's definitely an awesome place to work. And I can only speak to my experience on Valorant, and then I can only speak to my experience on Valorant maps. And what I think what I really enjoy about working on this team is that there's for how big Riot is, right? Like it's a huge company that it doesn't feel like you're like a cog in a machine, if that makes sense, right? You're working on this at this big company on this massive IP, and somehow there's still like a ton of creative input from everybody on the maps team, and everybody is fully invested into what we're working on and has like actually strong input on like what goes into the maps. And you might be surprised how often that's not the case on other projects, where you're kind of just told what to do, and that's that. A creative director might come in and say like, this is what we're doing. You change it, do whatever you're doing before, like that's out the door. And that's not really the case on this project, which is amazing. So that's like a super nice nice feeling to know that like the thing that you're working on, you have like a vested interest in, because the entire team like is contributing in a meaningful way.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And I need to mention one thing before I move on to the next point. I saw some of your work on ArtStation, of course, and in like your visual development for Breeze, and also like I think the newest map that came out. What was the name of it? Fracture, I think.
Yeah, Fracture.
Yeah. It's kind of like interesting seeing the 3D model of Ray's just standing there. I don't know why it's funny to me. Like, I don't know, I'm dumb, sorry, but it's kind of funny seeing Ray's just. It's like she's lost in that area. So like,
yeah, it's funny. Yeah, we have to put in the raise for scale, because it's very easy in Valorant's like maps to get the scale wrong. Like when I first started on Valorant. I didn't do that, and I didn't have like a scale person in there, and my concepts are like way out of scale. And part of it is just because the way some of the maps are designed, like it's hard to tell the scale, and they're aware of that, So that's something that they make sure like, hey, make sure like you get a scale person in there. And the easiest one for us to do is just like throw a raise that's like T-pose or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I mean, actually, Raze is my second main in duelist. Like, she's just so fun to just surf around with her bombs.
Yeah, I wish I was better at Raze, mainly because it does look so fun to like double satchel into a place and then just like kill somebody that didn't expect you to be there.
Yeah, I think you also saw Flight's videos like me. Everyone saw Flight's and they're like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna play Raze," and the next game, one satchel run, you're dead.
Yeah. You watch Flights and you think you can do it, and then you try and double satchel into sight, and then you just end up flopping yourself up into the air vertically.
Yeah,
and getting killed or something. Yeah.
All right, and well, the next question is kind of like we're taking a break from all this technical stuff, from work, where we want to know a little bit more about you. What area beside the area you're working on right now would you be interested to explore and learn in the future, given if you had enough free time and resources and everything? Like, it could be something completely non-arts related, by the way.
You said just like what I'd be interested in learning?
Yep. Or doing, not just learning. Maybe you have some long life ambition.
Yeah. Let's see. I want to learn I want to get into archery. I think that would be cool. Me and my wife did it when we went on like a staycation to this like resort, and we both got addicted to it. So I think it'd be cool if we could get into archery. That'd be dope. Let's see. I don't know exactly what this translates into, but I've been getting really into the history of Vikings. And just like Norse mythology and Norse people and stuff like that. I don't know exactly what that would be as an interest or whatever, but it's just something that I'm into right now. I've been into chess for a while. I think if I had more time, I think chess would be something that I would spend more time doing. And that's just like a crazy pursuit in itself, much like art, where it's a never ending process that could actually drive you insane to get good at. And I don't know what else. Basketball. I used to play basketball all the time with my coworkers down in Lake Forest when I was at Turtle Rock. And I'm really sad that the pandemic abruptly ended that and ruined it for me. So getting back into basketball would be something that I'd want to do.
All right. And we've reached the final question or section of the podcast, which is called Final Words. I'm going to explain to you what it means. Basically, imagine in a limited amount of time that you might have, in a limited amount of time, basically you have like a window of opportunity to talk from heart from one human to another human being, and that human being is anyone who's listening to this podcast in the future at any point in the future. Doesn't matter. And in that case, what would you say to them? Like, it could be an advice, it could be anything. What did you say?
I would say be nice to people. I think for some reason it's becoming less common today that people are nice to each other, especially online. Just think before you talk, think before you act, and yeah, just try and treat each other like human beings. And then if I had to say something, anything like art related, just do what you like to do, even if it means that you may not get a job as quick as you may want. Because in my experience, I did the opposite of that, and I've spent a couple of years doing something that I didn't fully enjoy as much as I could have if I just did the thing that I actually enjoyed doing.
Two beautiful answers. Loved it, honestly. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course, man.
And all right. Thank you so much for coming back to the podcast. I really appreciate your time. And thank you to anyone who tuned in and listened to this podcast as well, or watched the podcast on YouTube. Shout out to YouTube watchers as well. And if there's any questions or suggestions, like always, the whole routine, the shebang, just leave them down in the comments, or you can shoot me a DM on the personal page of the podcast or your podcast. And with that being said, take care, everyone. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you.